Welcome to the Victory Speaks Inspired Conversation series, where iron sharpens iron. That's you and me sharpening each other. I am your host, Nicole Waldron, your voice of victory and your mental fitness coach. And I'm on a mission to create inspiring life conversations with everyday experts, unsung heroes and thought leaders that will empower us to live a victorious lifestyle. As you join me on this journey through these inspired conversations, I hope you will be inspired to have intentional conversations that will lift you up and enhance your life. No matter the type of conversations we have, good, bad, funny, you name it, it can all be inspiring. Tonight, I invite you to get comfy, get a nice drink or a snack, grab a notepad, as you just never know when a wisdom key can be dropped. Please share this with your friends and get ready to engage with us. And good evening, everyone. How are you doing today on this fine day? Let me know in the chat, where you're tuning in from, what time of day it is, because you just never know. Welcome, 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 welcome. It is a beautiful day in Toronto, Canada. Here today, it's actually warmer, feeling like spring-like weather. And today I am excited. It is going to be a rich one. I am telling you, you heard in the intro, get a notepad. You are going to need a notepad. You're going to need to share this with some friends because this show is going to be supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I only use that word at certain times. And thank you for joining me on this new series of the Trailblazers in the Now, giving honor to our elders now and taking the time to learn from them and to show appreciation for the legacies that they have built and are still building. And so many times we just take people for granted and we like to give people their flowers when they're not here. I have an intention. I want to give them your flowers now. And at the same time this month, as we get into spring, it's International Women's Month. And as I tape this show, this week we're also recognizing the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. The 2022 theme is Voices for Action Against Racism. And I want you to go to the UN's website and look it up because it's really significant. It's very powerful, this team. And my guest tonight is a voice. She is a voice for action against racism. She is a voice for togetherness. She is a voice for unity. She is a voice for love. She is, she has become such a dear light in my life. My victory guest tonight, she's a CAMH elder. She's an elder in the community. She's a senior manager of strategic initiatives, Makwa Center for the First Nations, Inuit and Métis Wellness Center for the Addictions and Mental Health Toronto. Diane Longboat is a member of the Turtle Clan Mohawk Nation at Six Nations Grand River Territory and a citizen of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. She is a ceremonial leader, traditional teacher, and healer. Her work is braided at the intersection of health, education, and traditional knowledge systems of Indigenous nations. Since 2013, Diane has served as elder for the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. She has also led the development of the ceremony grounds for CAMH to establish the Sweat Lodge, Sacred Fire, and Medicine Gardens, including the policy development required to support traditional Indigenous healing as a standard of practice. Today, as a senior manager of strategic initiatives in Chicago Makwa at CAMH, her work involves organizational strategy for enhancing cultural grounded services to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and advancing the CAMH Truth and Reconciliation Action Plan. I'm telling you, she is a powerhouse. I got to tell you some more. And I'm not telling you everything about Diane. She is so full. She's probably going like, why is Nicole reading all of this? Because they need to know who you are. She's the founder of Soul of the Mother, a healing and teaching lodge on the shores of the Grand River at Six Nations Grand River Territory, having extensive relationships with First Nations in Canada, the United States, and globally. Listen, my friends, even as you just heard that, I want you to know you gotta go share. Remember, sharing is caring. Diane is a builder. and she is a friend to many. And so I'm going to bring her to the Victory Speak stage now. Show your heart, show your care, let her know how much you want her to be here. Diane, welcome to the Victory Speak show. How are you doing?
Oh, I am so thrilled to spend this time with you. I don't even have words to say how honored I am just to have time with you, Nicole, and all of the people who are going to be listening to us. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
See, we're already there. I know normally I can make my guests cry, but tonight I have this feeling the tears might be shedding both ways. And normally I would start, telling people a little more about you. But one of the things I want to do with us tonight is so many people start their conversations, their events, their meetings with a land acknowledgement, especially here in Canada. And you have such a great teaching on it. And I would like you to share with those listening here, really and truly, what is a land acknowledgement?
Well, we say in our way of life, when we greet each other, there's an expression that we use for one another, and it is, what is the clay that you are made of? Meaning, what is the land where you come from? Because you are connected to the land, you're a reflection of the land. And so we say we are the soil that walks. That's how close we are to that whole life force and all the beings in creation. And so when in modern times now we offer a land acknowledgement, it's for Canadians to understand the first peoples who are here, who will always be the owners of this land, the stewards of this land, and the keepers of this land, because we were given that duty and responsibility by the Creator, not by any other human being. So when these land acknowledgements are offered, it's an opportunity to make a statement. And, land acknowledgements are honoring statements, but they're also political statements, because they say, these are the first peoples who are here. These are the people who steward the land back in the original times and again today, and still today. So, those land acknowledgements are incredibly important because they also teach people who have never had a chance to learn any real Indigenous history in elementary school, secondary school. Sometimes they don't even learn until they get to university. So it's an important time for us, to be in public events when those land acknowledgements are offered.
And Diane, one of the things I've found is that people adapt. They go there. Sometimes they find something traditional. They go to the website, but I'm finding a lot of people are changing stuff, making it their own. How should we really do a land acknowledgement that really shows it the honor, and move in the purpose of what it was really created for?
Well, I think that's a beautiful question because, unless we take it with that kind of intention, then what happens is you just read off a piece of paper and it's just wrote and it's just a check the box, we did the land acknowledgement. But I think if you are offered the opportunity to do a land acknowledgement, it really is your civic duty as a Canadian to look at the place where you are standing. So we say, where are your 2 feet planted? So my 2 feet are planted right now on Six Nations Grand River territory, the homelands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I am a citizen of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So when someone offers a land acknowledgement, it's not the Indigenous people who offer it, because we know who owns the land, stewards the land, cares for the land. It's everyone else who needs to be aware of that fact. So, it's really nice when people situate themselves. They'll introduce themselves sometimes as a settler, sometimes as a third, fourth generation Canadian. Sometimes they'll talk about their countries of origin, the time that their families came here, and grateful to be here in this homeland. We always say, and our spiritual leaders have told us that when you live in North America, the geographical location we call Turtle Island, that we are living in a place of peace. And as Indigenous peoples, we are totally protected here. And we believe that, and we've seen that over time. because so much of colonization has tried to eradicate us. So going
Mm,
back to the land acknowledgement, that all of that history starts to boil up in that land acknowledgement. And if you're asked to do one, you go back to where you're situated. You go back to those Indigenous nations that were originally there. Sometimes because of colonization, we've been removed from those lands, but our people are still there in some form, whether it's an urban center, a town, a settlement. Our people are still there. And so honoring that territory, honoring the people, and introducing yourself, as you're giving this land acknowledgement. And also talking, I think, at the end of that land acknowledgement and saying, this is what reconciliation means to me. And this
yes.
is my commitment to reconciliation, because we're standing shoulder to shoulder in all of this now, whether it's environmental change, the pollution of the waters on the earth, the the racism that exists in this country. And it's racism and anger against everybody. Our people take the brunt of it. Black and Indigenous people take the brunt of it. um,
Yes.
but it's present everywhere as people really struggle with their own emotions, especially coming out of the pandemic.
That is so profound. And as I hear you, it makes me wonder, it's become like almost, I worry sometimes or get concerned that it's kind of like a tick in the box for some. When should you not do a land acknowledgement? Or is it a better question, when should you do a land acknowledgement? You tell me.
Well, I think you do a land acknowledgement when it's a public event. So I'll
Okay.
use CAMH as an example. So our executive leadership team is going to get together. It's an internal meeting. They won't do a land acknowledgement there. The land acknowledgement appears on the digital screens throughout CAMH. It's printed in French, it's printed in English, and it's posted throughout the organization. We could have translated into Mohawk or Anishinaabe if we wanted to. Most of our patients and our clients and families come through and they speak English, so that's the route we've gone. But we're certainly open to shifting it. Now, looking at that land acknowledgement, I think the important part of it is that when we offer it, it's done in a way that is a public event. So there's a
Mhm.
mixed audience there. You want to capture as many people as you can, whether it's a conference,
Right.
could be a meeting between or among hospitals. It could be a meeting in which the public is invited, whether it's patients and families, to something that's a public event at CAMH. Sometimes we'll have like open doors in May. We're going to have open doors in May.
Hmm.
So, at the beginning of that day and some words to welcome people, you'd want to offer the land acknowledgement.
Right. I thank you for sharing that, because I get very concerned of the kind of like, it's kind of like just everything. It's like you say good morning and people just use it as a, I check the box, and sometimes we just don't know what to do, and we don't know who to ask, where, on what we should do. Is there a particular place that one could really find some direction and guidance for doing a land acknowledgement?
Well, I found on the website the other day, the Canadian Association of Universities, and they had a really interesting land acknowledgement guide on their website. So what we're doing at CAMH is, in the Reconciliation Working Group, we are
Right.
producing our own land acknowledgement guide. And yes, the focal point is for CAMH, but that land acknowledgement guide can be taken and used across the system. So I think it's going to be useful.
And I guess, you know, just knowing the work that you do there, I am sure, and I think this is where honor is given, and respect is coming to you and saying, or coming to an elder and saying, is this appropriate? Is this wording? Because a lot of people are just doing it and they're not checking it. Would it make sense, or would you think that is something that one should do? Find an elder, find someone who can really speak to it before you go and do these public land acknowledgements and say, okay, I make it my, yes, you make it your own, but it can possibly end up being disrespectful in some ways for what
And
it's really meant to be.
I think you're so right about that. And we don't know what we don't know. So we need help. We reach out to each other and we ask the questions, how is this land acknowledgement? And so when I did a little bit of background digging for CAMH, developing our land acknowledgement, when I finished that piece of research, and of course I didn't do it on my own, I had our archivist, Dr. John Court, he was also affirming what I was up to. And so one of the things that was really important was reaching out to the chief of the Mississaugas and just running it past and saying, how does this sound to you? And is there anything I should add to it or omit or emphasize? And so, I'm never shy to ask for help. And I don't think anyone should be. We have so many Indigenous organizations in the city now, and really well schooled in our culture, in our protocols, and reaching out to any one of those organizations, I know that they would be glad to help with the land acknowledgement.
Now, you said something there, and I remembered going into a workshop once, and I wish I was able to stay for the whole workshop, but I remember the teacher saying, when you are going to approach an elder to ask for something, because sometimes we're going to ask elders for things, and as communities, and there's a protocol in approaching an elder.
Mm-hmm.
Share a little bit about how we really should go and approach an elder, even to speak. And I think especially a lot of people are asking elders to speak at events and conferences. What should that approach be? Because I know many people don't realize there is a way to do it.
And I think as we culturally revitalize across all cultures, we're starting to learn about these protocols now. So for our people generally, and I'll speak about people in the city, because there's lots of different Indigenous cultures in the city of Toronto, Métis people as well as Inuit. So I'll speak from the First Nations perspective of the Anishinaabe. Even though I'm not Anishinaabe, I spent so many decades with them in ceremonies and worked with their elders extensively. So what I see happening is an individual or a group will have an idea. They want an elder to speak at a conference, not just do the opening and closing, but actually to sit during the conference and be a witness to a lot of the things that are being discussed. And at the end, do a summation, the end of day summation, from an Indigenous lens. What do Indigenous people have to say about these issues, and what is it that we should be considering moving forward? So in order to engage in that kind of a relationship, there is first the invitation. Right. And that invitation is followed up by a gift of tobacco. So there's commercial tobacco, but there's also sacred tobacco. And lots of places now have, lots of Indigenous organizations now have sacred tobacco. And so an offering of sacred tobacco to the elder with the intention of their participation in your event. The elder will say, yes, no, I can accommodate it. Or sometimes elders have specialties too. And, some elders will say, well, if you contact so-and-so, that person is a better person to work with you because they have a legal background as well as a traditional knowledge background, ceremonial background. So they, there's places where we fit in. And so that's also part of it. But that discussion with the elder, I think, is very important to set a tone of care and respect for the elder. Some organizations will put in place an elder's helper that will kind of like be a guide for the elder to walk with the elder through the day, or if it's more than a one-day conference, escort the elder, to dinner or back to the room or whatever. And, that's very loving and respectful and caring way to lift up and honor the elders. It's also respectful to understand that elder that's coming into that room has decades of wisdom from a rich understanding of the creation stories of the nation, all of the stories in and around ceremonies. Maybe they're a ceremonial leader, maybe they're a healer, maybe they're a wisdom teacher in their communities. Maybe they're a knowledge holder of historical facts and
Mm.
things that are passed in oral tradition, not necessarily in books. So, so elders all have like different capacities, different capabilities, but all of that to say that when an elder walks into the room, it's like a living oral encyclopedia of.
Wow.
And so when you think about how does this elder live in the world, because that elder will have to put gas in the vehicle, or
Mhm.
hopefully it's an electric vehicle. That elder will have to pay, food costs and housing costs, the same as everybody else. So we always like to give elders an honorarium for their time, their energy, their travel, their work with us. And a lot of times after a conference, there's follow-up work to do because people become so engaged with the spirit of this indigenous traditional knowledge that they want more.
Yes.
There's actually a hunger that develops in you. And so, it starts many, many people off on their own personal journeys of healing or personal journeys of learning. And that leads to a lot of really great action in the country.
And beautiful new beginnings. And you said something that also reminded me of, you said it, I remember listening to you share, it was just such an authentic share when you said there's the land acknowledgement, there's the opening, but once you do a closing, and it was the first time I ever heard that, and I would be remiss, I'm so glad I remembered that you shared that. Can you touch on that a little bit for us, please?
Absolutely. So the land acknowledgement really is us as human beings gathering with a spiritual intention to honor the people and the land that we find ourselves on. When there's a traditional opening that's offered by an elder, it is the most important part of the gathering because it links the living that are on the earth, whether it's water, wind, plant life, animal life, bird life, the living things in the waters, the thunder that comes to refresh the earth, all of that creation, including human life, that creation is then really lifted up and given thanks and honored. And so, in that honoring and giving thanks, there's a connection to the spirit world. And
Right.
so, that spirit world contains ancestors of all of us. And so, those prayers, those openings connect us to ancestors and connect us to the creator. And when we say the creator in our language, we say Songwe Atiso, the one who made all things. So neither male, female, not gendered, the one who made all things. And that's an important concept because you are reaching for a power that is greater than yourself. And looking around, we see so many people with extraordinary gifts, and those gifts are making such a difference in the world.
Yes.
But imagine what those gifts could do if they were spiritually empowered. So, what the elder does in offering that traditional opening is create a spiritual empowerment for the people and the work that is unfolding. The ancestors start to move amongst us. People who were not in good relationship before suddenly start to have lunch together. Um,
Mm.
People who were very guarded with maybe some of the work that they were doing, suddenly they're sharing. So the ancestors are opening doors for us, creating opportunities for us, and it's our job to walk through. So at the end of day, it's very important to do a closing because
Right.
that closing then releases those ancestors to go back to rest in the sky world, we would say, and thank them for their really deep work amongst us during that day. So the opening and the closing is really it's like a ceremony in and of itself.
Oh, when I heard that the first time and hearing it again, I am, I'm trying to keep it together, right, Diane? Because I feel, I feel it in my very being. And Diane, I noticed tonight that you have up your Mohawk name.
Yes,
And could you tell us your Mohawk name and the meaning behind your Mohawk name?
yes, I'd love to
Please.
share that.
Okay, good. Because not, it's the first time I've ever seen it, and I think I've known you for how, I don't even know how long. So, like, yeah.
Well, I'm so proud of my name, and I use my name whenever I can, and I always use my name in introductions. So I want to show you how I introduce myself.
Okay.
Sego Scanagoa, Sewakweko, Kahontakwas Diane. So Sego Scanagoa, Sewakweko really means I hope that you are all well and still at peace. My name is Kahontakwas. So I introduce myself in that way because I don't know how many years ago it was now, but I visited one of our clan mothers at Six Nations. And I knew in my journey, I had spent a lot of time with elders already from different nations, but that I was going to spend a lot of time at home. And I wanted to learn Haudenosaunee culture. And so, visiting her and sharing my dreams with her, I got to know her really well. And she always helped me. And even when I was in the city and I couldn't get home to see her as much as I wanted, I would write her letters and she would always write me back. And those are some of the most cherished letters that I have. I've kept them to this day. So she gave me my name. So I went and saw her, and she burned tobacco for us. So that's in Haudenosaunee culture, it's our way of communicating with the Creator to ask the Creator the question, who is this woman? What do you call her? And so on. And so all the clan mothers, the women are women leaders in the community. And so those clan mothers have, each of them have names. We say those names are in a basket. And so somebody before me had that name of Kahontakwas. And so that when she passed, that name went back into the basket, and then I have it now. So it means she's picking sweetgrass. And sweetgrass, I was told by one elder, the most sacred and holy thing on the whole face of Mother Earth is sweetgrass, a braid of sweetgrass. And if you know how sweetgrass grows, it's like the long hair of an Indigenous woman. So it can grow about 2 to 3 feet high. And it grows, so it's tall standing grass. And when the wind hits it, and it just waves like this in the grass, and it looks like an Indigenous woman's long hair. And so when that is picked with ceremony and honor, then it's cleaned and then it's braided. And so it's braided into 3 parts to signify the balance of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And when you burn the sweetgrass from the tip of it, where the tip of the grass, what happens is that there's beautiful, fragrant, sweet smell that comes from that sweetgrass. And it just feels so good to inhale it and to smudge with it and wash it over yourself. And you can take chunks of that sweetgrass in the braid. We just cut off maybe 3 or 4 inches and make a pot of tea out of that. And I tell you, Nicole, that tea is so much medicine of peace, peace for your spirit, peace for your body, peace to take away anxiety and fear and help with the hard things that we're all going through. So that's what my name means. And so that means that I'm part of the Turtle Clan and in the Mohawk Nation. And it implies that I have a certain seat in the longhouse where we do our ceremonies. And so do my children. And I pass that name to my children. Everything through Haudenosaunee culture, through chief's titles, the titles for clan mothers, passes through the woman. It's in the woman's family line. So there's certain family lines in the community where those titles would pass through, and it's the women who decide who the chiefs are going to be, who the next clan mother is going to be. So yeah, so the women play just a strong and pivotal role in the community.
It's the first time I've heard that part, and it's International Women's History Month. What an amazing piece of history you have just shared. The woman and their role. And I'm almost like, oh, Diane, can you just give me a name? I just like, I know. I just sort of come and say, okay, what is my name? And the power in a person's name, that is definitely something very significant in
It
your culture.
is. It is. And it also comes with duties and responsibilities. Like you
Mm,
know that everything that we have is in a reciprocal relationship. So that reciprocal relationship of having a name means that you have a duty and responsibility to do your best work in your life to serve the highest good, not only for your own people, but for all people. And so that name comes with a spiritual mandate. So I was born with a spiritual mandate, and so were you. And all people. So, what is that spiritual mandate? Sometimes it takes us almost a lifetime to figure that out and
right.
find it and manifest it in the world. But, we believe we were not born here alone. The ancestors came with us, spirit guides and helpers came with us. They were with us through our birth, our travel from the sky world to the earth birthing, they are with us there, and they're also with us during our lifetime. So we have to find out who they are. Who are
Yeah.
those spirit guides? Who are those ancestors that are helping me? Who are those ones that are inspiring me with dreams and visions and challenging me to be greater than what I ever thought I could be? So that's all embodied in the name.
It's so interesting that you say that, because it took me a while to really embody my name.
Mm.
Nicole means victory of the people. And I would always, when I found out what it meant, I would use it. But I know in this season of my life, um, I'm really getting it more that I have to walk in victory. And hence the name of the show, Victory Speaks. And it's a sentence. It's actually not just, what victory speaks. It's actually victory speaks, your victory speaks. And you have to let your victory speak, and being a voice of victory for the people. So I so get what you mean, and it's so significant. I remember even when I was naming my son, um, and I took it, and took the 7 9 days, and his name means peace.
Oh, so beautiful.
And so it really speaks, when you can really tell a person's life, but just by looking at their name. And sometimes you can tell where they're having challenges, because it's almost trying to challenge who they are. Um so the name piece is important. And hearing all that you said, the name, the naming ceremony, how you got your name, how is the way that you raised guiding you today, even right now, as you now have come into a new season of life in yourself?
I have. And I consider this to be the best season of my entire life. I look back on my life and I see it in decades. The childhood that I had growing up on the farm at Six Nations, 300 acres of land and freedom to walk the trails in the bush, knowing what was growing in every season, knowing where to find things in the bush, and never being afraid of getting lost. I never had a compass. I had my two brothers with me, both younger, and it's the sacred duty to take care of them. And I never got lost in that bush ever. And I always looked for direction by looking straight up. And I know Inuit look to the horizon. I always look straight up. So, growing up in all of those different decades, using that next decade to go to high school in the city, University of Toronto, I graduated from there in the great love that I have for education. So I have a BA from there, a BEd teaching certificates for back in those days, elementary and secondary school. And then I went on to do a master's in education. And I did that because I was really guided by some really great mentors who said to me, Diane, you know a lot of different things that need to be built in this time period, but no one's going to listen to you unless you have the education behind you. So I did that. I went in the 70s. I graduated with a master's degree. So I want to tell you how extraordinary that is, because I was listening to David Newhouse, the chair of the Indigenous Studies Department at Trent University, when he gave a lecture just a few years ago, and he noted that in the late 60s and early 70s, in all of Canada, there were only 160 First Nations students in college or university.
Wow.
Yeah. Because see, we were coming out of a time of the Indian Act when, if you had a university degree, if you were a clergy person, you were deemed civilized, and so you were no longer an Indian, a ward of the government, and so you were disenfranchised from your Indigenous rights. So that time period was a very pivotal time period for our people, and we just we just started to pursue education as a doorway to building our own sovereignty, to
Mhm.
ensuring our self-determination, because so much of the colonial environment had oppressed our people and tried to um, really rub out the culture, the ceremonies, the languages, and the very best part of what makes us Indigenous, which is, our way of life and our beliefs.
Wow, that is, I'm just blown away. I can sit here and listen to you all day. Is there, as you speak about it and the education and your mentorship and, the woman, is there a particular woman in history that has inspired you and shaped your journey?
I don't know if it was really in history. I think it was more my mother.
Hmm.
And she comes from a family of 12. So I have to just tell you that my grandfather was born in 1886. And so my mother, he lived to 95, 96 years of age. And of course, my mother lived to 95. So, like there's these, long lifespans in my family. And, when I think about just the knowledge that my grandfather and grandmother were able to pass on to my mother and to her siblings. So back in those days, the residential school,
Hmm.
both my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, went to residential school in their childhood. And so my mother's family her siblings were the first generation of siblings, to really feel the full impact of what that really meant. So I'm second generation from that, and you can still see the remnants of that colonial sickness
Hmm.
that spread over our people. So one of the things I think that inspires me most about my mother was her ability to turn negative into positive.
Mm.
And growing up on a farm, building a farm of 300 acres on an Indian reserve, which is what they called them in those days, in the 40s and the 50s, coming out of World War One, the Great Depression, World War Two, and here we are building this farm. And so I look at that. I looked at how hard she worked. I looked at all the challenges that she faced within her own life,
Mm.
challenges of bringing us into the city. We went to school in the city and high school. Being at that time a single mother with 3 children and providing for them, and herself returning to school because she always loved school but never had a chance to go very far, because those one-room schoolhouses when she was growing up, there's dirt roads on the reserve at that time, so you got to walk to school through snow and slush. There's no busing system. You want to go to school, you walk, any kind of weather, any kind of conditions of the road. And so having 12 children in the family, which is really common in those days because everybody farmed, then she loved education. She went to George Brown College and she got her degree in nursing, and she came in first in her class out of 2.
Wow.
And she developed a lot of close relationships from that experience and went into nursing. And the kind of personality that she had was one that was very caring, very compassionate. She had an ability to lift people's spirits up. And when you're working in long-term care for 35 years, you've seen it all. You've seen the different, supervisors come and go, companies come and go, but the elders are still there, and so it was her honor to be able to take care of them. So she was the one that I modeled myself after.
I can tell. I can so tell right now that you are your mother's daughter.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you founded Soul of the Mother, a healing and teaching lodge on the shores of Grand River
Yes.
at Six Nations Grand River Territory. What is that about?
Well, that's about the fulfillment of a vision and believing in the Creator, that the Creator sent me a messenger. That messenger came to me in January of 1994. So my life then, I was living in downtown Toronto. My husband and our children were very small. I was running a program at the University of Toronto called, back in those days, the Aboriginal Health Professions Program. It merged into the Office of Indigenous Student Services and Programs, now known today in the short form as First Nations House. So I was the founder of First Nations House, and also worked on the genesis, planting the seeds of the Indigenous Studies program that exists at the university today. So I was the one that went around to all the faculties and knocked on doors and did inspirational, I hope inspirational talks in all the professional faculties, encouraging them from medicine, dentistry, OT, PT, speech, law, the undergraduate arts, and saying to them, you need to understand the real history of this country for Indigenous peoples. You need to understand how that history impacts you today and how it can determine our way forward in the future. You'll never understand that unless you put some courses in place. So, stirring the pot, putting a little pressure on, really good creative tension, as people like to say. Yeah. And so, you have to build. So I was living that kind of life in the city. And when a spiritual being came to me, and she manifested in physical form, and she said to me, the life that you think you've made for yourself here is over. You are going to return to the community where you were born, and you are going to create a fire of peace there. To that fire of peace, the nations of your people will come for their healing and their revitalization, not to change who they are, but to feel the real living essence of spirit. When you are strong enough, the doors of that lodge will open, and you will admit Black people, white people, yellow people to come to that fire, because they will be seeking the essence of spirit in their own way. Your job is to create this place of peace and safety so that people can experience that and celebrate that and grow and heal in their own way. Not to take on, Indigenous ceremony, but to feel the living essence of what spirit it really is and what it can be to us as human beings. And so, I was also told that this work is not mine alone,
Mm-hmm.
that it was the Creator's intention to send the strongest spiritual warriors to serve at that fire, not because they're serving me, but because that fire is part of their own spiritual journey. Their service at that fire means their growth, their evolution as human beings, their becoming within their own gifts that they have been given in the world. So I have seen that all to be true. And so by August of that same year, 1994, my husband and I found a house that was not for sale. Somehow we got that house. And today, when you look on in historical records, you will see that lots 62 and 63, where Soul of the Mother is located, were ceremonial grounds for Haudenosaunee traditional ceremonies. And so it was a deep calling home of the land, of the spirit, of the ancestors to do this work. And so I left my job. I had the spiritual calling, and I left the job, and I didn't know how I was going to make ends meet,
Mm.
but the Creator made these doorways and opportunities for me that I could never have imagined for myself. And of course, then Soul of the Mother grew because that fire was lit 2 weeks after I moved home.
Wow. 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 It even speaks to me when I hear about the healing circles.
Yes.
What is the power of the healing circle?
The power of that healing circle is to elevate the human being to a place that is halfway between the earth and the sky world, and to put you in a place of the Creator's infinite power so that you can be healed in every cell of your body, whether that's mental health, physical health, emotional health, or spiritual health, because we've all gone through trauma in our lives, and that without a doubt we are carrying also ancestral trauma. And
Mm.
that's true for every human being, ancestral trauma. And so there's things that the ancestors maybe in their time period never had a chance to make right. We the living have a chance to make that right, and we need to relieve them of the burden. We need to relieve ourselves of the burden, because
Mm.
we don't want that burden to pass to our children and to our grandchildren. So when people struggle today with, you know, with mental health issues that they say are genetic and kind of like passed down in family lines, you have a predisposition, or there's certain illnesses, physical illnesses that are, they say, genetic in origin and pass along. I never believe that. I never believe that. And I own that statement as much as I work in the healthcare
Yeah.
system,
Yes.
because I see that there's so much ancestral trauma that we carry in blood memory and etched on our
Yes.
bones that we need to relieve ourselves of so that our children can have a new life going forward.
That is definitely a conversation we need to have, and I think it's definitely a pathway to explore. You know, a few months ago, I hurt my shoulder, and I don't even know how I hurt my shoulder, but what I do know is I was overuse of my shoulder, um, and just kept going and not taking care of it. And recently, a friend of mine said to me, they said, "You have been carrying so much, it has manifested into your shoulder." And
Yes.
it's your right shoulder. And your right side is, and as I know it in myself, your right side is the hand of authority. And then it because I couldn't move it and it was so much pain, he says, "You're carrying so much pain." And it created a frozen shoulder. And I was like, when I started to see it in the spirit realm, I was like, oh my goodness. So everything you're saying there makes sense. And the trauma, I know we are going to have a part two of this conversation because we haven't even touched on the mental health piece that we have to talk about. But before we wind down, and we're going to do a part two to this, Diane, because I think we have to have a robust conversation on the trauma and mental health and wellness of the indigenous people, of people of color. We have this new term that they use called BIPOC, where they lump us all together and we shouldn't be lumped all together, yet we have similarities. And so that conversation in itself is just like, I'm sitting here going, okay, no, we're not going to have this conversation today because we will not finish. But one of the things I want us to definitely touch on, because it's that week of the elimination of racial discrimination, and the theme being voices for actions against racism. And when you hear that and you sit and you've done so much work in truth and reconciliation, what would be your message in this time, in this season? And it's like how we have it's how we have Black History Month. Well, it's always truth and reconciliation. It's always a time to deal with anti-racism. It's, to me, this is just a launch of a reminder of what we should be doing. So when you hear voices for action against racism, can you speak to that a little bit before we wind down for the evening?
I think so. I think that, one of the challenges that I see for people who are racist or experiencing racism is that racism is a form of mental illness. It,
Mm,
it's an outcropping of the lack of love in your life. So what we would say as Ongwehongwe people, Indigenous people, is that the most powerful medicine in the universe is the infinite love of the Creator. So what is it that causes hate? It is the absence of love. And understanding what is real love. How do I manifest love in the world? And so when I think about the title of your program like that, that whole title speaks to me of victory of infinite love spreading over the face of humanity. And I can tell you that, one of the CEOs that I had the privilege of sitting in a dream council with, she had a dream of two great armies facing each other on a battlefield, armed with all of the most, up to date killing equipment, highly trained, and they're lined up. The two great armies are lined up on this field. And she said she saw this river, and it was the air that took a particular formation. And yes, it was still transparent, but you could see the air was moving like a river. And it moved between those two great armies. And as they advanced towards one another, one person looked across and he saw his family members on the opposite side. And so the question becomes, are you going to kill your family?
Mm.
And, struck with that image. And then that river, moved along again. And that person looked across to the other side again and saw his own image on the other side. And so, that's what I try to see when I see hate, when I see people breaking down, when I see profound wars that are raging, not just in the Ukraine, all through the continent of Africa,
Yes.
in various places in the world where Indigenous people are under threat, whether that's in Central America, South America, all of these countries in Indonesia where mining and oil and gas companies are moving in and massacring Indigenous people to take the resources. So I look at that and I say, that is an absolute form of mental illness where the human being thinks that money and above all power is more important than the collective good. That is somebody who's gone off the edge of balance. And so
Yeah.
how do you correct that? You got to bring them back into balance. And that's where love has to predominate, and how to embrace love. What is love?
Diane, you're opening a Pandora's box here. What is love? So, what would be an action or a message you would love to leave people with today?
Well, in this time period when we're working collectively, standing shoulder to shoulder to reveal the impact of racism on our respective communities, teach Canadians about what is this and how do you bring yourself into right relationship with Indigenous people and Black people in this country, and develop a loving and a compassionate and a respectful relationship. I always say that I 100% believe that we can do that. That it's family by family, community by community, nation by nation. We are going to be able to do that, but it's not without hard work, and it's not without the ever important gift of forgiveness. We always talk about, how hurt we are, but we rarely talk about forgiveness. And I think one of the things that we need to embrace in all of our cultures is forgiveness ceremonies. So I believe that racism will be defeated. I believe that in our lifetime, we're going to see advances in that respect. I believe that there's a lot of people in the world who believe more as we do than the populist movement that says that it's trying to overtake the world. I believe that they will fail. And I have an ever-present belief in humanity and the good of every single person.
Yes, that is a message. That is a message of truth. That is a message of reconciliation. That is a message of love. That is a message, Diane, of victory. Oh my goodness. I am so happy that you joined me tonight. And folks, I'm telling you, we only scratched the surface. This is why she's an elder. This is why she's a trailblazer. She's doing such phenomenal work. And Diane doesn't brag about what she does. She just comes into the room and she does it. I think every time you come into a room, Diane, and every moment that you open your mouth, and I always tell people, everybody has their own frequency, and it took me a long time to understand that. And I would clam up because I would think, this person's already doing this. But because I have my own frequency, my voice is only tuned into some people, and it's okay. And I thank you for sharing the frequency of your voice, your knowledge, and your wisdom today. And Diane has given us so much to think about, and I want to leave you guys with some thoughts. I always like to give you the quote, and I'm going to use two quotes again because it speaks to so much of our conversation. Love is in the details. When you get, and that's mine, love is in the details. If you don't know, that's a Victory Speaks quote. But this is one is by Maya Angelou. When you get, give, and when you learn, teach. I ask you and I encourage you every day, seek to have an inspired conversation with someone you love or someone you meet today or have met along the way. Your conversations can be inspired by your truth, your love, your story. Make sure those conversations are meaningful, and it can even just start with a smile, even if you're wearing a mask. Remember to write down your victory moments in your day and in your week. And when you listen to Diane and when you listen to this conversation, find the victory, the acronym for yourself. Diane had a vision, and even in the midst of knowing her name and what her name meant, as she was doing her work, she was paused and she was humble enough. She yielded to the process. And then she became intentional and she cultivated the vision that was given to her and became so transformative. And now she is an orator. She gives ovation to many. Everything she does in love and comes in peace. And there's such a restoration that happens when Diane speaks to us in truth. And if you listen to what I just said and go back, if you miss it, go back on the replay. I really said victory. Find the acronym in victory for your life. I invite you to follow me on Twitter and on Instagram on Victory Speaks 7. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hey, folks, we made 100 subscribers. I saw that yesterday. And on Facebook, Victory Speaks 77. On Tuesdays, you can catch me on Clubhouse on the Champion U Room, where I have some moderators with me, Danny Stone, Chander, Lovemore, and Dr. Vibe. And we want to champion you. On the Victory Speaks podcast, we have the Minding Our Minds series, and you can catch that on a Wednesdays. And there's also the Victory Mindset audio podcast. Now, that's just like a 15-minute little oomph to your day. You can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And what we're doing with the shows now, this show, like with Diane, is that I am taking it and putting it into audio format so you can listen to it along the way. So we are going to say goodnight to you. Thank you so much for joining us this day. Remember to let your victory speak and smile, share, care, and forgive. 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 A big message from Diane today. Forgive. And I'm going to bring Diane back. I'm going to find it in her schedule because we have to speak about mental health and wellness. She is so knowledgeable in this space. And especially when it comes to Indigenous people, we have to speak about it. We have to dispel those myths. We have to get the help. We have to talk to the systems. So, Diane, thank you so much. And folks, we say good night for now.